Hi, I'm Mark with Crown & Caliber, and welcome to Hidden Gems. The OMEGA Speedmaster started life as a racing watch. It's meant for the track, but for reasons OMEGA will continuously remind you of, it got known for going to the moon instead. But there was a time during the 90s that OMEGA tried to push that heritage back to the forefront, and they did so with the Michael Schumacher Racing Editions. So let's get into it. So let's start with the obvious. The OMEGA Speedmaster, introduced in 1957, is practically an instant hit for OMEGA. It has the first tachymeter scale on the bezel. It is meant for the racetrack. It's meant for timing cars. That's what it was supposed to be. There were a few drivers out there in the late 50s and early 60s who used it for racing, but that's not where it became famous. It became famous because some of those guys racing cars that used it were racing their Corvettes that they then parked at NASA and took up to space. Those are the guys that made it famous. They took their watches, brought them to NASA, passed NASA's tests, went to the moon. And if you have a choice as a brand to say, hey, we go racing, or hey, we went to the moon, you pick the moon. And OMEGA did. The track kind of became the other thing, the little factoid we all knew. Hey, that started life as a racing watch. It never became that. But if it's still in your heritage, why not lean into it at some point? And if you're OMEGA, why not, if you're gonna lean into it, pick the best racing car driver in F1's history, Michael Schumacher. In 1996, they went to Michael Schumacher and said, let us sponsor you. Let's try and get back into the auto racing world. And they did so using the OMEGA Speedmaster Automatic, or known as the Speedmaster Reduced. In itself, you could probably call it a hidden gem because it is the moon watch brought down to a size of 39 millimeters, add automatic to it. It's everything you want a Speedmaster to be. Easy to wear, day in, day out. But around here, we see so many come in and go out that I couldn't honestly call it a hidden gem. It's pretty known and was honestly a great hit for OMEGA. But the ones that don't get that attention or love are the Michael Schumacher ones, because they didn't come looking like an OMEGA Speedmaster. They came with special coloring. They came in Ferrari red, Ferrari yellow, and Ferrari blue. And that's because Michael Schumacher was a Ferrari driver. We've seen some of these hidden gems before, like the Tudor Tiger that came in these fun colors, but they weren't popular at the time. They weren't an instant hit. And these were kind of the same thing. The Michael Schumacher branded watches, they had these beautiful colors, but we weren't ready for them yet. Colors in sport watches wasn't what people wanted in the late 90s. Today, it is what we want. We look at the Rolex Oyster Perpetual just selling out in all the colors. We're seeing different color Nautiluses. We're seeing all these different colors come out in watches, and it's become the fun thing. But if we look back, we can find some of these watches that were passed over the first time, became hidden gems. And that's the Schumacher watches. It's the speedy reduced, the great size, the classic styling, but with a fun color in them. They came with a great bracelet or on matching leather, your choice on which one you'd prefer there. To me, all three of those watches, they bring me joy to wear. I like seeing a little color on my wrist. That's not where OMEGA stops. They actually did what OMEGA does, which was make a special edition for every year Michael Schumacher won a title during their time sponsoring him. And he's Michael Schumacher. He's the greatest race car driver in F1 history. He's tied with Lewis Hamilton for the most wins. So he won 5 times in a row. That meant OMEGA put out a special edition for every year Michael Schumacher won a title, some of them being speedy reduced, especially the first year, which has a really cool, interesting dial that's based off a larger racing dial used on the full Speedmaster. They also came out with 2 Michael Schumacher Legend Editions. So in total, you have 10 different watches you can choose from that are Michael Schumacher Speedmaster OMEGA watches. Is that an overkill? Probably. But what's nice about that is you get to choose which one speaks to you, which one do you like, which one to you is a hidden gem, and which one is the one that should maybe stay hidden. And for me, my 2 favorite, the one that started it all, the Michael Schumacher Speedy Reduced in the 3 colorways, or the one that was at the end. the Michael Schumacher Legends Edition, which instead of having a tachymeter around it, on the bezel, it has all the records of Michael Schumacher. And for the hour markers, it has 1 through 7 as digits, and it's for the 7 titles he's won, and the rest of it have stick markers. And then Omega does something that they do from time to time, which is instead of putting in a typical movement, they put in their version of the Piguet 1185 in it. That's the same movement you find in a Royal Oak chronograph or an overseas chronograph. This is the movement Omega likes to put in sometimes that is hierology and just finds its way into a random Michael Schumacher Legends Edition watch. There's a lot to that watch. It's not as openly appealing as the different colorways. But if you're an F1 fan, and if Michael Schumacher is one of those guys that you look up to and you go, man, that's the guy I had on my wall growing up. That's the ultimate racing driver to me. That's a really cool watch to have. Michael Schumacher, in the later part of his career, left Omega and went to Audemars Piguet. And with that, Omega was dealing without their top driver. Rolex is the main sponsor of F1. They decide, you know what, we're gonna give that to Rolex, to tag the IWC. It's a crowded field over there. We have the Olympics and we have the America's Cup. We do sailing in the Olympics. That's our sports. We'll leave the Speedmaster as being the watch that went to the moon because no one can compete with us there. And they play to their strengths. Even though the Speedmaster started its life on the racetrack, it was a very short-lived time in F1. And that's a shame because I would like to see Omega get back to that. I'd like to see Omega say, this is who we were, this is who we should always be proud of, we should continue to try and be on the track. But until then, we have the Michael Schumacher Racing Edition, which to me is a hidden gem. Thank you for joining me as we looked at Omega's history in F1, and especially the Michael Schumacher editions. If there are any other watches that you think we should dive into their history, let us know in the comments. See you next time on Hidden Gems.